absolutely rolling and rolling and rolling. Make sure you clap, thank you.
All right, so we clapped in and we're all good to go. Hello and welcome to the Pagey train. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you Vonne Patiag, winner of Made in the West 2015, runner-up numerous amounts of times, and man of many talents, Spirit of the West. Welcome to the Pagey train.
Hello, my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh man, let's kick it right off and start talking about the Dead Man's Face Was His Own, which is a hard title, which I hear people get wrong all the time.
Yeah, I usually reference it as Dead Man's Face because it's a bit zingier, easier to remember.
Well, what was the motivation behind creating such a film?
So I made this film right after.
That's okay. No, you're good.
Just
give it. Yeah,
cool.
Move it around. Give it a bit of a bump. It's all fine.
That sounded good. I made this film right after film school, and when you're a filmmaker, fresh out of film school, and you have no idea what to do, you try and do Chop Fest because, it's the most publicly recognizable short film sort of arena, I guess. It's like, if I get into Chop Fest, it might make things cool for me.
It might be a bit of an in.
Yeah. I think especially when you don't know how to get in, it's kind of like one of those film festivals or film, I don't know, I wouldn't call it initiative, but a film program that kind of is quite inclusive to anyone and everyone. So I did the thing of trying to get into Chop Fest numerous times by making films on just I paid for everything. It's off my own blood, sweat, and tears. And Dead Man's Face came about because one of my close friends, Andrew Rolfe, he's a comic book artist. He's very an independent comic book artist, and he'd been writing these comics about this detective named Parker who goes through what happened. And I kind of read the comic and was like, I kind of really want to adapt this. And I had this perfect window to shoot a film in December, I think, and I just was like, I'm just going to use this as a script. And the comic book was literally the storyboard, and we just shot it really quickly. And
you shot that really quickly?
Well, it was maybe 3-day shoot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it was beautifully shot. It was a very well shot film.
Thank you.
It was. I think there was one. I've actually used it in promos a lot, as you probably would have noticed. There's one continuous shot where he's running through the park.
Yeah.
That would have been challenging.
That was. What's funny about the film is that I watch it now and think about how much I've grown up and gotten better at the craft or whatever that means, and kind of look back at
more
this
proficient.
Yeah, and look back at this being wow, we really I don't know, we were quite lucky with the few things that we did, I remember that shot specifically. We did that at UCID in Victoria Park, right outside UCID, and we had a gimbal with the camera, and we just ran about 4 times.
Yeah.
We just did that. We just tried to do the shot, and we were we don't know how this is going to turn out. We're not going to do rehearsal. We're just going to
no blocking, just wing it.
No. And Tom, who's the main actor, he was game just to do anything and everything. So
he did a good job as well.
Yeah, he's actually based in London now. He's more of a stage actor, but
okay.
Yeah,
he's out there making something.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
he's been doing stage stuff. I don't know.
I must say, with The Dead Man's Face, it was one of those films at that point of Made in the West where we noticed a lift in filmmaking in Western Sydney, because there was always a lot of heart. And you occasionally get one of these films that just pierces through. And I remember when that film showed, and even before it showed, when we started critiquing the lineup for the festival, I'm like, this film, I said to my crew, I said, this film is an indication of the changing force in Western Sydney. I don't mean to make you blush about that. And that's why I refer to you as one of the original rock stars.
Yeah.
And because of that conversation that we had that night, I'm going, you're an absolute rock star, dude. I may have been a little bit drunk at the time.
Yeah, I think you were.
Yeah. I may have been a little bit drunk. But ever since then, we've always put rock star hidden in all of the print media and all of the social media. There's always a rock star hidden in there.
Yeah.
Because I think, since there are other rock stars that have risen up as well.
Yeah. I think, what's funny about the film is that I mean, I must have communicated this to you before, but like it was actually shot in 2011, and it kind of had a bit of a life, not online, but like it played like a few like really small festivals. And then what was weird is that I actually went on this like massive trip. Like I went overseas for a really long time, and I came back and put Dead Man's Face into Made in the West, because I kind of looked at it again and I was like, you know, I feel like I'd been, you know, I guess you call it like reborn through like traveling and stuff. So I
recharged,
kind of, and you know,
quickened.
And I just like looked at the film again. And I actually put it back into the edit and just cleaned up a few things that I just felt, you know, time had given me the space to actually like look at and be like, okay, cool. This is like, look at it, looking at the film objectively. There were a few things that I fixed, and then I put that in, and it was like, I don't know, that film festival, like when it won, was a really big turning point for me personally, because like at the time I'd, you know, quit my full-time job and like had just been traveling and kind of didn't know what to do. So, you know, like having a big win like that really just, I don't know, it kind of motivates you in a way that you don't really expect. I think like a
little bit of a fire under.
Yeah, thank you.
Because you've gone out and done a lot since then.
Yes, I have. Yes,
and a range as well. Like, let's just go off the resume. You brought out Yang. Was Yang before the Dead Man's Face?
No, Yang was after.
It was after, which is I suppose shot in a similar way, but the genre is totally different.
It was
totally different.
Yang and Dead Man's Face are weirdly my genre phase. Like, because none of my other films are really genre.
No, I think you've really found your voice.
Yeah, but it was interesting because, like, I feel like I really liked genre, you know, in my early 20s, because it does have, I guess, like, parameters around, like, you know, in terms of writing and, like, and filmmaking. You can watch other films and kind of take from them and learn filmmaking by, like, emulating the masters that you sort of praise.
I think that's a really big point. I actually, to reference Hunter S. Thompson of all people, he took Hemingway and started typing Hemingway just to know what it felt like to have Hemingway in his hands.
Yeah.
And so he emulated one of the greats, so he knew what it felt like to be great.
Yeah.
And when I talk to musicians, like if you talk to any musician, they've never just written a song straight out. They've done a cover first.
Yeah.
So I think there's a correlation in film as well. You look to your heroes and you try and do what they've done.
Yeah.
And then once you get to a point where you go, well, I've done that now. What do I want to do?
Yeah. I mean, I always find my films in general tend to be quite, like, especially with the collaborators I usually choose, like they tend to be quite referential to like things that we like, and you know, every shot that we set up or even story beats like are always kind of referencing films that we've seen, or you know, I like films that I like to make films that exist within the film history, like lexicon, you know, like that exist alongside other films. So to find its place. Yeah, and to also, like, you know, just know that your film is a conversation with other films as well that have come before it, and is, you know, ideally starting a conversation for future films as well. So
yeah, great. That's a great outlook. I like that. Yeah, the lexicon of film. I like that. But then we've gone out to continue the resume. You've gone and done Window, which I thought was a fantastic film.
Yes.
That's a film where I watched the viewers and gone, there's a film where he's finding his voice.
I totally found my voice for that film.
Yeah.
That was such a surprise film, because like that was the first film that I was able to get. Oh, you won't find it. It's not public. Sorry.
No, it's not out there. Have you even got the promo? Have you got the promo? No promo.
Trailer. It's being released soon. It's actually, I've sat on it for so long, but I just haven't released it yet.
Oh,
but,
dude, you got to get that film out there. It's really good.
But it was my first film that was commissioned.
Yeah.
Like in general. So Dead Man's Face and Yang I self-commissioned, and, you know, put in like a few $1,000s to spend. But Window was like by far probably the smallest budget that we'd worked with, but it was interesting to work with actual stakeholders. We worked with the St. Kilda Film Festival and Olympus Cameras, who had a bit of a film initiative that it was a really weird initiative. Like, I was living in Melbourne at the time, and they Olympus had come out with a new camera called the OMD Mark to like I don't.
You've done really well to get that far.
Yeah, I don't think anyone uses Olympus. Like you're not using Olympus here, are you?
No, I'm on Lumix for these bad boys. Yeah,
it was
just Panasonic, really.
Yeah, no shade to Olympus, but they aren't the best video cameras.
Okay.
But it was this initiative where you had to use the new camera as a video camera. So you pitched a short film that was very visual and kind of like had a visual style to it, and 5 films were chosen, and obviously Window was chosen because it was like a suburban, like, you know, very slow meditative kind of like film that within the 5 films that were chosen was quite different. And and it was just really funny because like I'd moved to Melbourne because I was attending VCA for acting at the time, and had kind of, I don't want to say I ran away from Sydney, but like after my big trip, I just felt like I needed to get away and like be by myself. So I
can relate to that.
I moved to Melbourne by myself and like, you know, was exploring like my acting side and like and that just led to like more creative expression. So what was weird is that like I wrote Window and I still have the original, I guess, like pitch document, which literally outlined everything that happens in the film, but like in sentence form. So it's like, and the characters don't even have names. I'm sure you've realized. So it's I numbered them. So it's like 1 sees 2, like 2 washes his car, 1 does this. Like it was so bare bones, the script, and the only piece of description that I put in was like set amongst the Western Sydney suburbia. And when it got commissioned, the funniest thing was that like the only thing they said that they loved was that it was set in Western Sydney.
Wow.
Because they were like, you know, this is like quite a, like it can be a timeless film and like you can just use actors to kind of convey this, but we really want you to film it in Western Sydney because we know that it has such an aesthetic. And like that was really weird because I moved to Melbourne to run away from Western Sydney in a way.
And then they make you run back to Western Sydney.
Yeah, and had to go back and like, so I ended up shooting it in my parents' home, like in my childhood home, and like I starred in it as well. And what was weird is that like that film definitely is I don't want to say it's a coming out narrative, but like it's kind of like an exploration narrative.
Yeah. I think it has elements of a coming out film, but I think it's definitely exploration.
And I was like, it really did link to what I was going through at the time, which was like exploring who I was and finding my voice. And it was also the first drama, like proper, just straight-laced drama that I'd ever done. As well. So,
it was very straight up.
Yeah,
it was very straight up. I think it's interesting that you say that they wanted a selection for, you know, the aesthetic of Western Sydney, because I think that there's something that there's something to be said of that. Like, because if you look at it comes up time and time again, the artist ratio in Western Sydney of people doing films is it's phenomenal.
Totally.
And the ability to switch different locations and get different backgrounds in a short distance is quite profound as well.
Western Sydney has so many better like shooting locations, and logistically is so much more friendlier than a lot of city. Like, you know, being in Sydney, geographical prejudice is so real, especially culturally. Like, and I'm not saying like just like racially, I mean like
postcode,
but also like actual like arts culture. You know, like it's so city centric, inner west kind of thing. And I've ever since Window, I've shot all my films and projects in Western Sydney because I'm just like, you know what, I kind of want to be able to park outside the studio or where we're shooting
and not get a ticket
and not have to move my car every 2 hours or like, you know, and it's all about also like I feel just so comfortable shooting in these places and knowing like I feel like whenever I do shoot in Western Sydney, it's not like I'm thinking of the power of the representation, because to me like I'm just shooting the story, but I definitely see the power of that representation afterwards. Like when we had Window, so Window ended up playing at a lot of like national film festivals, and it was really fascinating because like I remember going for a lot of international ones and getting a lot of feedback saying that like they didn't recognize Australia in the film, and I was like, what do you mean? Like, what does that even mean?
Oh, you mean like from an Australiana kind of perspective? They just like the suburbs that we put on screen, it's Minchinbury, which is quite close to here, but like they just didn't see that as Australia. So we were getting these notes back being like, where is this set? This is so weird, like, you know, and like the characters have weird like accents and stuff, like we don't understand where this is set. And I'm like, it's just in Amazing.
Western Sydney, you know, like, and also like, you know, the other actor Jordan Galloway is a close friend. Like, he's from, I think he's from like country New South Wales, you know, and like, but you could argue that like, you know, people who aren't like on Home and Away, you know, people from Western Sydney have a certain like body type and a certain look kind of thing. So even they were like, who is this guy? Like, he has a weird body. Like, we don't know what that is. And it was really fascinating because like a lot of national film festivals, Australian festivals, understood what that landscape looked like. But outside of Australia, it just didn't resonate.
Yeah, it's amazing how those perceptions could be like that because of films that we've put on the international stage.
Yeah.
And then we actually go to do something that is down to earth, and we go, this isn't an Australian film.
Yeah, I think a lot... I've been talking to a lot of people about this as well, like thinking about how much we actually shoot in Sydney, because I think a lot of the suburban stuff that's going international... A lot of the suburban stories that we tell here that go international are actually shot in Melbourne. So we have a really good idea of like the Melbourne suburbs.
Yeah.
It's in the feature film space, but like not much actually is showing Western Sydney.
Yeah, and the suburbia in that sort of way. Yeah. Well, they've done a few out here. Like I remember when I was a kid, they did stuff like The Idiot Box.
Yeah,
it was one of the films that was shot in Western Sydney. Even Two Hands that was shot in Western Sydney as well.
Yeah.
Oh, Sydney and Western Sydney.
Yeah.
So there's those ideas. When you see a Parramatta Road in a multi-million-dollar production, you're like, oh
I
man,
love it.
Yeah,
I absolutely
that's great.
love it.
It's great to see.
There is definitely something magical about seeing like somewhere you recognize on screen. It's, you can't deny that there it I don't want to say it validates you as a person, but like it just validates your experience. The way I always talk about it is like when I think back on, you know, history, cinematic history, and you look at like the 1960s and 70s when they just started to film in Brooklyn, New York. Like before that, people always thought Brooklyn was gross. Like it was just like, oh god, this borough is like disgusting. But you know, filmmakers just flocked to Brooklyn and started shooting films on the streets, and all of a sudden it became what we know as Brooklyn now. You know, like you understand the history that's there.
Yeah, the accents, the dialects, the buildings,
but also like the vibe and the culture and kind of what's existing there. And I think like that's the power of representation, is that it normalizes an area and actually shows you the potential of stories in there.
Well, I wonder if there's a comparison between that movement when people were making films in Brooklyn. Was it about the same thing that we're going through, about accessibility?
I actually think so.
Yeah.
My last year I actually curated Blacktown Shorts with the Blacktown Arts Center. So it was like a film festival where we actually commissioned 5 short films, and that was kind of one of the, you know, the one tenet that I actually had for the festival, which was like, I want to work with Blacktown filmmakers who have a strong connection to Blacktown, a personal connection to Blacktown, but who also shoot in Blacktown. Because like I just think it's so important to actually show where you live and what's recognizable to you, because other people will latch on to that image and see themselves. I think that's, you know, you can argue the power of cinema and representation.
Yeah, I think so. But speaking of Blacktown Shorts, what inspired you to do that? Like, because I think we from Made in the West, we get content now from Blacktown Shorts, which I think is a great buzz, because now it's creating these nodes of where people are making film. It
was funny because like in the last Made in the West, I called them like my grandchildren, these Blacktown Shorts, because I just helped like sort of executive produce them, but I didn't have any creative input. I kind of just guided these filmmakers if they needed it, and it was really interesting to see them pop up in the festival.
And flourish, man. Yeah. But some of them have done really well. You know, speaking, we'll come back to some of the other films later, but Halal Girls.
Yeah.
Wow. I was looking at it before. We were talking off air before. I thought it was 500,000 hits for this bad boy, but it's around 600,000 hits.
670 now.
670, approaching 700,000 hits. That's phenomenal, dude. It's really well done.
It's very crazy because like we actually, like me and my producing team, and also like ABC, who commissioned the show, like we continually like go to the metrics on social media and try and figure out why.
Yeah, what's the trend and what's pushing it?
Yeah, and so many like, and we actually don't know. Like we actually figured out that
it's hard to do.
It's somehow been picked up by the YouTube algorithm. So like obviously the majority of our views are on YouTube, but like we literally have exponential views that won't stop growing, but it's at the same rate
Yeah.
daily. It's really strange. 'Cause,
Yeah, so it has a consistent growth.
Yeah.
And you can't pin it geographically, or
No.
you can't pin it through a context, or,
No.
or
And even like us trying to, because we're quite active on social media, like us pushing out content or us like pushing people to the YouTube channel, like even that is not.
it doesn't attribute to it.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
We're
look,
just like stumped.
well, I can tell you that with a few. There's a few clips that I've run on my channel where I go, okay, so this is a documentary that I made about cars.
Yeah.
And you can see the trend for car enthusiasts. Some things are very predictable.
Yeah.
Because you're hitting a market, and that market's receptive to that.
Yeah.
To that film, but there's other ones that you don't like. You look at the. I've looked at the geographics of the viewership. You're like, why are people in Argentina watching this film?
It's weird.
It's weird how it works, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. Like it kind of was a good lesson for me to just think like, my thinking now is if you just do the good work and put the hard work in development, and try and make good creative decisions around your project and take care of it, it'll just naturally find its audience as well.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that, especially about putting in the hard work, and speaking from the heart and doing something. And because I think that's where originality comes from, is when you speak from the heart and have that honest conversation with yourself, and then that honest conversation in the production of film. You can really start hitting nerves that you didn't even know existed.
I think the strongest thing you can do as a filmmaker is to actually have inclusive practice, but I always say that inclusivity starts with yourself. Like you got to include yourself in that conversation as well, and like know your motivations behind every film that you're doing, because filmmaking is like anything in life, just a series of decisions. It's like millions of decisions made up to create a child, essentially. I call all my films my children. So and you got to raise that child, and like it's really up to you to figure out what's best for that child. And I think like the best thing you can do is if you create a safe space around it and let it have its own identity, it will end up telling you what it wants, which I think is always the most powerful place you can be as a filmmaker. Because I'm just gonna like kill this metaphor now, but like the child has your DNA, so then like intrinsically you are your film. And I think that if you can get to that place of filmmaking that is both personal yet like an actual process, it's quite powerful.
I think there's certainly something to be said for that. But let's backtrack for a second. You did a film. Was it Shading?
Yes.
So Shading, let me think. Was that 2018?
2018.
Was that still at the Paddington RSL for that one? Or was that Event Cinemas?
No, that was Event Cinemas.
That was Event Cinemas?
I remember I actually missed that year because I was caught in a storm in Melbourne.
That's right, because it was these hazardous storms that were going on at the time. Now it's coming back to me. Because I was a bit bummed that you weren't there, man. Because we finally got the brass ring right. We moved it from the Roxy, where we're on this little tiny screen, and then we had this SD screen in the Paddington, which was quaint and it was great. But then we got the brass ring where we're doing DCP,
Event Cinemas,
big screen. Big shout out to Event Cinemas. Thank you.
Thank you
for this opportunity and for this platform. But yeah, that was you went on a different track on that film though. That was more of a documentary.
That was
That was commissioned too,
that was commissioned.
SBS?
All my films are commissioned.
They're all commissioned.
I know. Oh my god, that sounds really bad. No, that was actually commissioned.
That's a good thing, dude.
It was by Create New South Wales and Diversity Arts.
Okay.
So they were just looking for small films that actually were, from Western Sydney filmmakers that explored topical issues about diversity within the arts sector. So what was funny about that was that like I actually got commissioned to only do a 3-minute film and end up being about 7.5 minutes, and
it's very typical.
And I just like it was one of the times where I'm always happy to kind of like cut back and cut a film and be like, okay, kill your darlings kind of thing. But with Shading, I actually was like, you know what, I think I'm right in terms of like having to keep at this length. And it was just hilarious because they continually were like,
we need to shorten it.
You need to shorten it. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that.
Well, 7 minutes is still good though.
Yeah, I thought it was a good length, and also like it was a really good training ground for dealing with trauma with the participants as well. Like, and something that I really felt like I'm really big on inclusive practice and kind of like allowing people to create that safe space around people to actually like be themselves in what you can argue are not like hospitable environments, like film sets, like. And one thing with Shading was that it is a documentary about the practices of makeup and lighting on people of color on stage and screen, and how there's psychological effects that are unseen because like you're told that your skin shade is literally like is being tweaked. And to be personal about it, like I actually did create the doco because of my experience on Window, which was like we were sitting with a grader, and I absolutely love the film and like love the creative team on that, but I just remember being privy to a conversation between the cinematographer and the grader who were talking about my skin tone without really consulting me.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh yeah, like just add a bit of blue to this shot, and I had to be like, hey guys, look, I don't feel comfortable with that grade because it doesn't look like me. Like it doesn't look like my shade of brown. They were like, oh yeah, but it's film, it's different. I'm like, no, it's not, because you're actually grading the film to the white guy and putting that same like LUT on me. And I was like, I need someone who understands my skin tone and like the greens in my skin to actually be working on this.
But surely you could find a LUT that would find between the two tones?
Of course.
Well, that'd be the scientific approach to that?
Well, we ended up doing like 2 different grades for the actual shots to match them. But it was just like that experience, like having to actually decide to speak up. And I was like, it was Window. I was directing the film. It was like my little baby. I was like, why am I feeling uncomfortable to say this?
Why have I been excluded from my own production? What's going on here?
So I just started like talking to a lot of people about this issue. And so Shading does feature three different actors who kind of have gone through the same thing and have their own like little pockets of trauma. And yeah, it was a good shoot. Like we shot that over one day, and we kind of like, we obviously like tried to cap the interview so we don't end up with like millions of hours of footage, but we were like, what,
keep the ratio down.
But we were crucial. Like, take the time you need, like speak as you want. And like we had to take as many breaks as we could. Like some of the performers broke down on camera, and we had to kind of like, it was a good lesson for me in how to work with
difficult content
and also like trauma, especially like unseen trauma. And I think that has definitely fed into a lot of my work now.
Well, I think it was definitely a hit at Made in the West. It's a shame that you were stuck on a plane in Melbourne.
I know.
But last year, 2019, Tom Girl.
Yes. Oh my God.
To put it in perspective, holy shit, man, what a film. It was very well received.
I'm just so glad it came home. I always say it came home to Western Sydney, because the film was shot in 2017 and, was on SBS. So it's an SBS commission, and we kind of have been touring it all over the world, not just Australia, but like it did mean a lot to me to kind of finish off its film festival run in Western Sydney.
Yeah, great. That's all, man.
With the audience that kind of can it's shot in Blacktown. They can literally see that the station arcade and know it was shot there, and like
Well, obviously a very personal film that's certainly written from the heart. So what are some of the things that inspired you to make this film?
So what was funny is that like it was just after so we'd done Window, and I'd actually moved back to Sydney, and me and my producing partner Maren Smith, we formed our little production company, and in 2017 we were recipients of some Screen Australia funding for development for like a little web series. And what was really weird is that our executive, this is such a long narrative.
It's fine. We got time.
Okay, cool.
We got plenty of time, man. Tell us the narrative. But people want to know, man, because it has so many compartments and devices to it. It is so layered.
And also I feel like film, like life, is a series of like millions of coincidences and decisions. So this is explaining how Tom Girl got birthed, I guess. How I got pregnant with this film. But
how'd you get knocked up with Tom Girl? That's what we want to know.
So the Screen Australia executive that we worked with, he actually chose to slow us down as a team, and he was like, you know what, you guys like should go out into the industry and try and get like better at your filmmaking craft, like just try and make stuff. And like he was really strategic with us, and I mean, this is advice that I'm giving out for free as well, but like use the clout that you have to try and open those doors, kind of thing. So, Great New South Wales announced an LGBT initiative for film, and we're encouraging people from, marginalized communities like CALD community, Western Sydney, to kind of come in. So me and Marion were like, you know what, let's try and go for this. And what was really funny is that like we had no idea. We just had no idea what to do. We just knew that we wanted to do a film, and at the time, like I took a flight to Melbourne because I just was going down for a holiday. I could just clearly not get enough of Melbourne. Like I, didn't want to leave it. But so I was flying down to Melbourne, and I just was sitting on the plane being like, okay, I really need to develop a film. Like I really need to have something to pitch to Marion because like we're running out of time and all this stuff. And I just like sincerely thought like, why did I move back to Western Sydney? Because I was like, I fucking love Melbourne so much. I'm assuming I can swear on this podcast.
Fuck no.
Okay. Cool. But yeah, I just was like, I love Melbourne so much. Why did I bother moving back to Western Sydney? It's so boring. I fucking hate it, etc., etc. And then, as you do when you're like younger, And then I thought like, well, the reason why I moved back to Western Sydney was actually to be closer to my parents. Because like I'd lived out of home for 6 years, and I'd traveled overseas. I hadn't really... Like I'm still very close. I was close to my parents, but like I hadn't like spent time with them. So that's kind of why that was a big thing about why I moved back.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
And the first thought I had when I did that, when I thought that, was like, oh God, I fucking hate being Filipino.
Really?
I was just like, oh God, it's so like gross. Like my mom's like so stereotypical of being a Filipino. Like
yeah.
kind of like she's Catholic and all this stuff. And I was just sitting on this plane, just having these thoughts, and when I thought that, I literally, it's like all my, I don't know what you call it, like chakras or something, aligned. Like my thoughts just struck straight through my body. Yeah. And I was like, holy fuck, I think I need to reconnect with being a Filipino person. Like, and culturally, I need to reconnect. And I started, the Melbourne flight is very short. It's like 45 minutes, right? So
it takes longer to get off the plane than it does to fly.
Yeah. So I was like, this was the whole flight, just having these thoughts. And I landed and called Marin and was like, hey, I want to do a Filipino film. I don't care what it's about. I need to do a Filipino film.
I need to get this out.
Yeah,
I need to work this out with myself.
I was like, there's just something that really like inspired me to do a Filipino film. And she was just like, yeah, she was like, thank Christ, because like that's exactly what I wanted you to do as well. She's like, it's amazing.
It's amazing how sometimes someone can see something on you that you don't see yourself.
Oh, I mean, Marin, if you're hearing this, she has a knack for that. She's always
shout out to Marin.
She's always like, yeah, I knew you'd get to this conclusion. I just needed you to get there on your own. I'm like, yeah, I knew it. But yeah, and then obviously the film related to like me coming out as a queer person as well. And I really wanted to like reconnect with my Filipino roots, and a lot of that was to do with like my memories of Philippines. So I've only been there once when I was 8. And I remember distinctly like having a cousin who was bakla. So bakla is like where men cross-dress as women. And I learned all this stuff through research, but like bakla doesn't actually translate to gay in English, but it's kind of mistranslated. So it's not actually a sexuality. It's kind of like a cultural identity. It's a cultural sexual identity. So it denotes the actual practice of cross-dressing instead of like labeling them as like gay or straight, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So to me that was like, oh my God, like wow, there's so much nuance to being Filipino, and it made me really like question my relationship with English, with the Western world, with Australia, like being really diving back into my Filipino identity. And I just remember my cousin who, was bakla and like would cross-dress, and I was 8 at the time, and he just was amazing. Yeah. You know what I mean? I just was like, oh my God, you just don't give a shit. It's so cool. It's so amazing. And then the other thing I remember around that time is like me coming back to Australia from that trip and telling all my friends about like my superhero cousin who was just like he was like just didn't give a shit, like, and your heroes when you're a child are kind of like, they inspire you, and my friends were just like, that's weird, that's really weird. Like
that you saw him as a superhero?
No, that like it's just like your cousin's really weird. That's not normal.
Oh, him personally?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I remember being like, why is that weird though? Like I don't. When you're in Philippines, no one judges like the bakla, right? Like, it's just like a cultural practice that's normal, but in Australia, all of a sudden, it was weird. And
You'd find that weird because there's a bit of a, in Australia, there's a drag queen culture.
Yes. Right? Yes, totally.
And it's something that, I think Australia's proud of.
Yeah.
And they've even made, Priscilla Queen in the Desert.
Yeah.
We've made international stages on this topic.
So it was just like a really weird thing I remembered. And then the third thing on that now is that like at the same time, the word bakla kind of like exploded in my school, which is like it was a Catholic school in Blacktown. Shout out to St. Michael's. Oh God. But like,
oh dear.
Yeah. But like all these, when you're 8 or when you're 7 or 8 and like you call each other gay because it's funny and it's like an insult and you're like, oh my God, you're gay. And it's like hilarious, right? So like the teachers have got a wind of so many kids using this as a slur that like they banned the word. You couldn't say gay at school.
Okay.
And so what happened was all these white kids like learned what bakla meant and started calling like everyone bakla. And I just that was literally imprinted on my mind. These white kids who'd taken this word that they didn't understand and were this Filipino word and were throwing it around. And that's literally the first image of the film.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, you really went deep on that, didn't you? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, man, I'm really glad that you got to do that to, throw that, fishing line down into yourself and then pull that out. That's amazing, man.
Yeah.
I never knew that side of it. Like, I always thought when I watched the film, like, okay, because when you see someone make a film, you can see the attributes of them in the film.
Yes, yeah.
Regardless of what genre it is.
Yeah.
Like, even when I write films, I'll be like, well, that person's a little bit like me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you reference yourself when you're writing. I could see that, but oh wow, I never knew that it had come about. I never understood that you had written it with that much reference.
Yeah. It was interesting too because like the relationship with the mother, who's also called Esperanza, and that's my mother's name as well, like who is a nurse in the film, and my mother's a nurse, but also like her style of parenting, I guess, like and her relationship to Australia, and also her relationship to her son, of like having these idealized expectations of her son becoming Western. Like it is a very common thing in Filipino circles, and also Asian families too. But me specifically, all my cousins had the same experience of like their parents literally speaking to them in Tagalog, like all their childhood, and then swapping to English because they were like, well, we need to give our kids a chance to actually like flourish in a English-speaking country. So
from an assimilation point of view,
And there's this kind of like weird trauma that you go through as a kid of like being like, so now you're just going to speak to me in English now. And oftentimes that English is broken. So you lose that communication with your parent.
Yeah.
Like that you don't get the nuance of what love is from your parent because like they can't communicate with the intricacies of language.
Yeah, okay.
So there's like, at the end of the film, literally the mom is like, I don't know how to communicate to my child anymore because I've just lost, I don't even know if my child loves me. And Uncle Norman's like, no, he knows, trust me. Like, yeah.
But you can speak in Tagalog though.
I can, I do that weird thing where I can understand it fluently, but I can't string a sentence together.
Okay, wow. No, I've actually with some of my Italian friends that their parents will speak Italian, but they can't speak Italian.
Yeah.
I'm like, why wouldn't you want to? I just find it because with my partner Misty, she can speak Slovak, and I go, well, I'm making an effort to speak Slovak, so that I can have that power of being bilingual.
Yeah.
It's a powerful thing.
Yeah, totally is.
Yeah, I think it's amazing how the things can turn like that, where you go, no, we want to assimilate, but we don't want to speak our native tongue, so we need to learn English.
Yeah.
But you'd think, in this day and age, like you certainly would want both.
Yeah, there's also, I mean, like for me, the migrational story, like I think there's always a bit of trauma in terms of moving country, and like having kids in a new country, you kind of want them to have their feet solidly in the country they're in. Like my parents don't hardly talk about their childhood. They it's not like they refuse, but like you just have to probe them so much because they're like, you don't need to know about that shit. It was in the past. Like, you're here now. You don't need to know who these people are. And I'm like, I would like to know who my family is. So there's that sort of tension as well. And again, like with Tom Girl, I did try to relate that in the sense that like there is this simmering idea of trauma underneath all of the three characters' lives. Who's like Justin, the main kid, his mom Esperanza, and her brother Norman, who's the uncle. I wanted the language and I wanted the scripts to kind of denote like, Uncle Norman's literally like, no, because Justin's like, I want to dress up as a girl because girls don't get hit, and Uncle Norman's like, oh no, girls get hit too, and to hint that he's been beaten or has been the recipient of violence, as a buckler, as a cross-dresser as well, and then like showing the mom like having a family photograph, and having the dad scratched out. Again, hinting at like the trauma that's underneath. The
way that you did the visual language for that, the way that it was scratched out has this, you can see that it has a violence connotation to it. Yeah, you're like, whoa, it really hits you on the right on the spine.
Yeah, so stuff like that obviously was buried under this 10-minute film that celebrates everything Filipino.
Well, look again though, it was certainly well received, but I think you've suffered a different trauma in a way of being the most frequent runner-up in Made in the West.
Oh my god!
Over the last decade, the amount of times you've been runner-up, because we do the scaling, and we're like, okay, because you watch it like a bar graph that grows and shrinks, grows and shrinks, grows and shrinks. You're like, oh, they're head to head, and you're like, oh, no,
I will say it's been an honor. It's been an honor being nominated and being a runner-up to so many fantastic films, and I fully am supportive of a democratic process.
Well, I'm just really glad that you keep resubmitting, and I do. Yeah, I love that you say that because it is a democratic process. Yeah. It's something that we're very. It's very open book. It's very open and honest, and it's something that we like to celebrate.
Yeah.
You were hinting on it before about diversity, but rather inclusivity.
Yes.
And that's what we're about. It's about that being inclusive and being proud of your postcode, being proud of where you're from. And it's okay to be you, whatever that is. It's fine.
Yeah. What the weirdest thing about me coming back to Western Sydney post Melbourne, which is like my transitional year of like becoming Vonne, but like
Vonne's journey.
Yeah, but like prior to that, when I'd lived in Sydney, I'd always been so city-centric. Like I went to UTS, I went to USyd, I lived in Glebe. I just like was always like focusing on the city. My whole life was in the city. And then the last 4 years that I've been here, I've just been Western Sydney. Like I still do kind of work at the Joan, like on and off, just like front of house stuff. Like I have a lot of friends in Penrith now from the Joan as well. Like I have really close friends, and what's amazing is that like the people here are so naturally inclusive without you realizing it. And when you try and tell people who aren't from Western Sydney that, they're like, oh, but aren't they like, all bogans who are judgmental?
Yeah,
like,
that stigma idea.
I was like, no, they're actually the most open people. Yeah. Like I've never had to justify my existence to anyone who is from Western Sydney, and I think that speaks volumes about like the actual community in this area. And I definitely think, I always say this, like the film industry needs more of that.
Yeah. We were really proud of it. And it's something that happens organically.
Yeah,
it's an organic thing.
Like so like the natural inclusivity. Like that's one thing that like, I mean, it's been interesting, and I mean, we can go into this because we have time.
We always have time. We have plenty of time.
Navigating diversity initiatives and navigating like film industry politics and navigating inclusivity on other people's terms, but that aren't mine, from the film industry, has been really tough. Because like it's having to like understand that I'm intersectional and that I'm like Filipino and queer and from Western Sydney, and knowing that like when you engage with the industry who is just going to marginalize you threefold because of that, and then to be invited into these rooms or projects or, getting these commissions that have like diversity strings where it's like, oh, you're going to get this because you're this,
Yeah, the box ticking mentality.
And I'm like, I totally applaud that and support it as a tool for promoting conversation. But I just feel like, me personally, like I've started to shy away from that sort of part of the film industry. You know what I mean? Like,
so have I. Because and it's actually come from compliments in Made in the West. People go, "Oh, it's just great that you guys are very diverse, and it's that you're promoting female directors, directors of air quotation color. But it's not the person that Films don't win because of a person. They win because of the film.
Yeah.
It's about the content that they've made.
And also with Made in the West, I feel like I've never seen any like social media or outreach where you are like trying to actively get marginalized people to enter. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not, I don't think I've ever seen you be like, we need more female filmmakers. I feel like it's just naturally females. Like, they come in and
all
enter.
these directors are out there.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
And I think that's like, that speaks to the idea of inclusive practice in an institutional level, you know, like, and I think, I don't know, I am saying this, film industry needs to learn a lot from.
Well, I think we're lighting fires under people, and we're getting people motivated to, and then we encourage them to be themselves, whatever that is.
Yeah. And
then you end up with this plethora of different content, and it's so. If any diversity exists, it actually exists within the content itself.
Yeah,
that's the thing that's different.
Yeah.
Because there's such a variety of films that we get.
Yeah.
We used to get, don't get me wrong, and I think they're great. Like, we used to get a lot of horror films.
Yeah.
Always getting horror films. And there's something to be said for that. It's great to have that genre. But, and what we're noticing now is we're getting a variety of different genres.
Yeah.
We're not just getting that, because I think horror films are one of those entry-level films where people they're motivated.
Yeah, my first films were genre, like I said before.
Yeah. So genre films that are motivated that way, and I get that because you're emulating your heroes and you're motivated in that way. But what we're seeing now is these really honest films that are really, they have heart, and I think that's the biggest thing. They have so much heart.
Yeah, I think it's also a testament to the idea of having screening opportunities that allow a community to come together. You know, I just think like when I was in film school, I would never have thought that there would be other Western Sydney filmmakers, you know, because I was going to UTS, like, and I was like one of 4 people of color in that whole cohort. Wow, back in like 2007. But, you know, like, and also having to travel in from Blacktown every day. And I just was like, remember all my classmates I was like, wow, you just don't know anything about Western Sydney, you know. And so for me, like, existing in the film industry for so long, I've just always felt alone. And then like what happened was, like, when I moved back to Sydney and I started trying to actively work in Western Sydney, I had so many film industry people ask me like, where do we get more of you, you know? And I'm just like, look, there are so many filmmakers in Western Sydney. You just need to create the opportunities for them to actually like screen their work and come together as a community and like lower your gates, you know? Like it's like the talent is out there, but there you just have institutional barriers that you don't understand. Yeah,
man. Well, this is how it started. Like, Made in the West started out of protest, man. Yeah, it really did. A bunch of me and my friends, we made a film. Like most people do when they're trying to make a movie. They go, we got this idea, we got the script, we've got the equipment, we've got the locations, we've got the actors. Right, let's go do this movie. And you shoot the film, and you edit the film, you're like, oh man, we got our baby. It looks great. Let's get it out there. And then as we went to so many different film festivals, and no one would accept our film. And then we got a bit downtrodden by that. We're like, what have we done wrong? So we decided to go along to the film festivals that rejected us. And we realised, we watched some of these films, we're like, you know, not being, you know, self-righteous, you're like, our film was better than half of these films. What's going? And then you ask the question, what's going on with that? And then we got to the point where we're like, you know what? We'll just screen it ourselves. Right, so we'll find a venue. We'll screen it ourselves. And we realised it's really boring showing a 10-minute film just on its own in a cinema. It's a boring idea. We're going to invite 100 people, we're going to watch a 10-minute film, and then what? So we invited other filmmakers, and that's how it began. That's how Made in the West began.
That's exactly how Chopfest began as well, I think.
Well, Chopfest is our bigger brother. We do have alliances. So we do promote each other, but I think they're in a bit of trouble at the moment. I think they're coming in December now. Because it should have been on by now.
Yeah, was it in Feb?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Look, I must say, not to talk too far out of school, I hope they get their game together. But I went to their website and I got a 404.
Ooh. I mean, it's been good. It's always been good that they moved to Western Sydney, though. to Parramatta Park.
Oh, look, I'll talk to you off camera about that. That's an interesting story.
Oh no, I've heard things too.
You know the story?
I know a story.
Yeah, okay. No, I wouldn't want to say that on air. Yeah, we went through a bit of pain and struggle over that.
Well,
but we made friends in the end.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, but it's all positive, man. As long as people are making films and we get platforms to show them, at the end of the day, that's what we want.
Yeah.
And that's where we're striving towards. We're in our 9th year. We're about to go into our 10th year next year. I'm already thinking about next year. I haven't even done this year's festival. You're an insane person, Ross. No, but look, there is so much going on in Western Sydney. The accessibility, to equipment, to people, to locations, and the freedom to do what you want.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I really like, is the freedom.
Yes.
Totally
I mean,
free.
the thing I always say, I've said this like for so long, is that I think we actually need more producers, because producers naturally, they create the business, they create the connections. Like, me working with Blacktown Arts and like me being around Made in the West as well, like, there are producers who are actively making these things together. But I remember with Blacktown Arts, like, when we were getting Blacktown shorts together, we had never done a screening in the showground, for instance. So then, like, when I was working with it, and I was working on Blacktown shorts for about a year and a half in some capacity as a curator, and like to have to literally like find a company that did an outdoor projector with a screen, and then like work with the logistics team at Blacktown Council to understand like a public event capacity, and how like it's not a fair, it's a screening, so we need seats and like tickets, and you know, like having the cafe open at the same time. Like, it was weird, but those conversations had to be had, and I just was like, I was sometimes amazed, being like, oh my god, like it's actually quite easy to do an event like this, but you just never had someone try and connect it all together.
You need that that person that's driving it. And it takes an administrative arm to do it.
So definitely like collaborating with the producers at Blacktown Arts really helped, but it did teach me a lot about, like, I don't know, reflecting on it, I just think we need more producers to actually like connect the dots, because Western Sydney is so sprawling. There's so many creatives here, there's so many businesses, but like to have producers and creatives who are actually like making those things happen and making films that are culminations of those connections, I think.
I think that's something that Still Searching Productions runs into a lot, and it's something that we do a lot of, and that is event development, screenings, events, and you're right. It's all about executive producers and producers. If you get the executive producer behind you, you've got a little bit of money to drive. And generally you don't need a lot. You don't need a lot of capital to get things going. You do need some, but you don't need the entire world to do it.
No.
But then you need those people that have the ability to connect those dots, and to connect those dots you need to be able to be a little bit articulate, a little bit patient. I think that's just a little bit of patience. Look, I think the biggest challenge that I've faced as a producer in Western Sydney are the councils being in different geographics. So when you're trying to do something across a platform of 2.5 million people, and you go to one council and say, we're doing this, but it kind of crosses over with this other council, they'll go, well, we don't want anything to do with that. You're like, well, but it's very helpful for our area. And that's where I find the most difficulty is the synergy between councils.
It's so hard. Like
in one council it's fine. But when you
that is really hard. Like, I know Tom Girl was lucky enough to be supported by Blacktown City Council, and same as Window. But with Halal Girls, it was the first project. I think because it was a bigger scale project, we were able to get support from Bankstown City Council, Parramatta City Council, and Blacktown. But we didn't even shoot in Blacktown. They just wanted to like support me as a person. But it was like, but it was really. Don't
forget to mention us. Mention us, please.
But it was like, it was really, it was so tough to navigate that, and we shot the majority of Halal Girls in Parramatta, and then had 3 days of shooting in Bankstown City Council, in the council there, in Greenacre and in Bankstown proper at the Arts Centre. And like going from Parramatta City Council, which has like such a refined relationship to film, you know, like they try and attract like bigger films, and things have shot there, and so they totally,
and a lot of their staff have been involved in film as well.
So they totally knew
they get it.
We were like filming permit. They're like, oh, you know, they signed it straight away, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And no shade to Bankstown City Council at all, but like, I just feel like it was clear that they hadn't had much relationship with film.
Yeah, it's a bit more arduous in that sense. Yeah.
So it just became like a month-long like shit fight to get approvals in that council. So I was like, okay, so I have like 5 shoot days that have been fine, and we have 3 shoot days in Bankstown that are sandwiched between here, and now like we're worried because like we don't have approvals for that. And it just was like,
yeah, and now it's in the balance, and we don't know what's going to happen.
And it was a process of us to actually be like, okay, look, like I know we're stressed and I know that we need this approved, but like I had to keep going, like I have to understand that we are breaking new ground here, and like, you know, we're creating this connection between like this council and film, so like I need to be patient, and I need to like it'll all work out.
Well, that's why the patience comes into it. You gotta be a bit patient.
Yeah.
No, Parramatta are really receptive. I found that Liverpool are quite receptive as well.
Liverpool.
They're very keen to get people into their district to make creative projects.
Yeah.
But there are others that they're keen. It's just that they have a lot of red tape and a lack of not understanding, but language.
Yes.
There's language breakdown of sort of jargon. There's jargon issues in there.
Yeah, even like relaying, if you're not around production teams, like relaying your scale of production, you know, like to say, oh, we have no standing lights, we have a moving camera that's not going to be on legs, we have like scenes that walk through a space, we're not invasive, we have crew who are hidden in like a little unit base kind of thing. Even that was like, what does that mean? I don't know, you know, like, and it's like, I remember we were having troubles with the council who just were like, oh no, we need you to pay because like this is a big production, and we're like, no, it's like that's on screen now, we literally shot there, like it's 3 actors with a camera and a soundy and like a director on a monitor half a street away, that's it, kind of thing. And they're like, okay, but what does that look like? I'm like, it's gonna look like 5 people on the street walking, you know, like I was like,
it's hard to translate it sometimes. It really is.
We're not blocking up the street. I was like, okay, cool, it's fine.
Yeah, we're not stopping traffic.
Yeah,
we don't need any police support. It's fine.
Yeah,
it's sometimes hard to translate. And again, though, it comes down to that jargon.
Yeah.
So that translating that film jargon into a public servant sphere can be difficult.
Yeah,
really can. But with that said as well, another council that I found is very keen for you budding filmmakers out there is Campbelltown. Campbelltown are very receptive.
Very cool.
Yeah, they're like, please come here, make a movie.
That's good to know.
Yeah, because they want your business.
Yeah.
They want you to go in, because essentially when you go to especially for medium to larger scale productions, you go into those spaces, they know that you're going to be using their economic field, so you're going to be shopping there, you're going to be buying things there, you're going to be getting people inspired, and they know that there's a roll-on effect. They understand it, so they sometimes will cut through that red tape and go, you can shoot there. What's
good about it as well is that like I always feel this, like your film absorbs the environment it's created in, you know, so like, you know, even though we had, I want to say there were issues. They were just like production, like it's just things you have to solve in production. But like
your standard problems
that come up in a film. But like, you know, I like to think that Halal Girls like absorbed that madness of Bankstown, the chaos of like the cultural chaos as well, and that informed how the show came together. So I totally think like, you know, never view these issues as like make or break things. Like let your project absorb them and kind of like.
I think that's really good advice.
Yeah.
That's really good advice. I think you worded that well. Let it absorb it.
Yeah.
And grow from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. Actually, speaking of advice, we were doing a show with you recently, Main the West TV.
Yes.
And I've taken some advice away from something you said.
Oh, God.
Don't forget to live.
Yeah,
I think that is
totally.
really good advice, because we get so tied up in being creatives and trying to make products. We forget people's birthdays.
Yep.
We forget family events.
Yep.
We got to remember the reason you start to make film.
Yeah. I just think like film is always personal, even if you don't feel like your film is personal, like, and it doesn't have to mine your own trauma or like be a biographical film. Like anything you work on is going to absorb you, you know, like your stress that you have in terms of like your family life or like your home life or your living situation is going to come into your film. So I think like that's something I learned, you know, like having a bit of a balance between the creative side but also like carving out time for me to actually exist as a human as well. And
don't forget to be a person.
And like eat properly and maybe exercise once in a while, you know, like it's just like I feel like when you're in production, there's not I just don't. I think like when you're starting out in film, you always do that thing where like you have so many shoot days and then you get sick, you know, and I'm proud to say now that like I haven't been sick on my last 2 films afterwards.
Yeah, well, you got to keep the sword sharp, right?
Yeah.
And so I think diet is a big part of it. I think working out. For me, working out, I've got to break it to your kids when you get older. You got to work out a lot more.
You got to work out. You do.
You've got to work out because your body needs resilience, and that comes from a bit of body stress, and that's exercise.
Totally.
You know, you need to go through those things, but as well, you need that psychological benefits as well of being around your family, being around your friends, not forgetting to keep in contact with people.
And know that like in the film industry, which I've been privy to see, and like I don't speak much of because like, which I can if you have questions about it, but like you know, like working within the film industry now, I'm really happy at a place that like the place I'm at now, like meeting so many other filmmakers. They have lives too, you know, like you're going to these projects and going into these rooms with other humans, you know, and like, and for me, like I've been lucky enough to be like to be like a freelance writer and a freelance creative and a freelance director as well, who's working with some, you know, very big production companies, and they invite you to the table because of your life experience, you know, like I think that's something that a lot of people who are looking to jump up to the next level of the industry don't really realize that like you as yourself are the best selling point for you to get further.
I think that's really cool, man, because what you're saying is it's not just about your skill set.
No,
it's about who you are as a person and what you're doing.
Totally. There's a lot of like untalented people who network their way up to the totally, like
I think that's every industry though. I think that's every industry.
I always think like the best rooms, because I work a lot in TV, like writers rooms, like the best writers rooms are the ones where like someone has literally curated who is invited to that table because the project needs that. Do you know what I mean? So like, and they know the writers personally, and they know like, oh, he's really good with dialogue, and like, oh, he's really good with like cultural inclusivity, and I'm gonna bring him in, and like, oh, he's really good at like or she, sorry, I'm gonna say too many he's, but like, you know, like
it's okay.
She's really
it's okay, Vonne. You can say he. It's fine.
But you know, like she's really good with story structure, and like you form that team to come together, and I think like, but the one thing that I've seen is that like, you know, these people are getting in because they exist as themselves, you know.
Yeah, well, for me, look, speaking of that, one of my best talents in the world is getting the best out of somebody. I can walk into a room, you put me in a room with talent, I can make stuff happen.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily need to be the thing that I'm making. You put me in a room with people, I will get a product.
Yeah.
That will always be the case, regardless of what industry it is. I guess where I channel Andrew Lee. You know, Andrew Lee is someone that I've talked to about it, you know, and it's a little bit of a hustle. You got to be able to.
Is this Undy?
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, totally.
Has he done one of these?
No, I've got to get him on.
Oh, okay.
Big shout out, man. Big shout out. I'm coming for you.
Hi, Undy. Hi.
No, we had him on Main the West TV last year, and he put it into, you know, he articulated it very well. It's about. And not a hustle in a negative way. I mean this in a positive way. You've got to be able to draw on what's around you and draw out of people and be able to also give.
Yeah. He is such a hustler. Oh, my God.
He's a worker.
He, like, one thing that really changed my filmmaking prowess. And I'm not trying to like plug anyone here at all, but like I did this creative intelligence course with the Compton School, which is a new school that got formed in 2018 that sought to empower creatives, not just working in film, but like music and art, to with emotional intelligence, because it's I don't know if it's like a bit of a tragic story, but like I know one of the founders was the ex-INXS manager. So you know, he obviously been working in the music industry, he'd seen the effects of like art and like the lack of creative emotional awareness within the personal lives of the artists that he was working with, so they would burn out. And this school, I just did a 2-day course with them, but it was literally tailored at like creatives and gave you methods and, you know, practices that allowed you to not burn out, you know, like to know to little things like time management and like working how to like what works best for you. And what was good about that was that it was so like tailor-made to you personally. It was like, you can do this or you can do this, see what works for you. And I remember one thing that I spoke to Andy about, which is something we both do, is like your circle of influence is something that a lot of people don't really tap into, which is like, you know, as an artist and as a person, you actually get so much more benefit from working from the people who are immediately around you. And you have to realize that like, yes, you may want to make a Hollywood film, you know, may want to work with Matt Damon and whoever's like up and coming. Like you may want to direct a Marvel film, but like right now that's not in your circle of influence. And the best thing you can do is create a project that taps into your circle of influence.
Totally, man.
And naturally, when you keep doing that, your circle gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
I recommend to people, if you want to make a movie, write a list of 12 locations that are within your grasp.
Totally.
Write a list of 12 actors that are within your reach.
Yeah.
And write a story about that, what fits in the confines of that.
Yeah.
Because then it's achievable.
Yeah.
There's no point of writing a movie that you go, right, I want Matt Damon on Mars.
Yeah.
And I'm going to shoot it on $10,000.
Yeah.
That's just not going to happen.
No, it just won't happen. But, you know, like if you make a film that's like set in your backyard about like something, like it will happen.
Well, there's been guys that have done it. I think, you know, going back to the horror, for instance, the two guys that made Saw, right?
Yeah.
They ended up doing a short film, and they won this contest where they were given $1 million to make a film. And they're sitting in a bar going, "Fuck, what do we do now? We're out of ideas, and we've tried nothing." So they were sitting in a bar, and Mad Max was on TV.
Yeah.
And there's a scene in Mad Max where he goes, "That saw can cut through your leg, but not the chain."
Yes.
And they're going, "That's it, Saw." And the whole premise of that film is built around that idea.
Yeah.
And it's two guys sitting in a bar drinking a pint of beer.
Yeah.
Figuring out, fuck, we actually caught the car.
Yeah.
You know, two dogs chasing a car. They actually caught it and were like, what are we going to do with this car?
Yeah.
And they panicked. And through that panic, they calmed down and got influenced by an Australian film and then took that into another genre.
Yeah.
And totally made an empire out of it.
And look at them now.
And look at them now.
You know, and one thing that I've always been fascinated by as a filmmaker is like career trajectories. Like one thing I always do is when I know a film is coming up, or it's like directed by this person, I will always look them up. I always just love to know how people end up in the roles that they do and like what they've done before. And you always see it. You always like, and know that like in terms of film industry and like how the media portrays it, like know that everyone has like those gap years where they were a nobody. Yeah. And you know, like, so if
there's no such thing as an overnight success.
If an actor like pops up in a role and just like, where the fuck did she come from? Or if a director's like, oh my god, he's like the next Wonderkind, like know that they actually always have worked so hard to get where they are.
Yeah, so your circle of influence is really important.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it's sticking to what you have within your reach.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
And know that, like, you know, as that's something that to get, you know, more personal in terms of like, especially this year.
We haven't got personal enough.
No, right? I know. But especially this year, I've really started to define myself as an actual like artist and away from my films. You know, like I think in past like Tom Girl's a personal films. People watch Tom Girl and like think they understand me. So for me, I'm trying to really flesh out what I want to do,
Always bumping that mic.
Yeah, sorry.
Don't apologize, it's all fine.
You know, I always say this, that like it's been fascinating to work in Western Sydney because I do get a lot of people asking me how, like, you know, how did Halal Girls end up on ABC? How did Tom Girl end up on SBS? Like, and I always tell them, like, it's not out of reach. It's just that I worked in a creative agency for 6 years and like it was something ridiculous, like 200 commercials, you know, under my belt in that time. Like, I made short films and I failed a lot. I have like short films that have never seen the light of day. Like,
of course, we've all got those.
Yeah, but you know, like there's so much experience behind the success, you know, and
yeah, there's a lot. Like, it's like, you know, someone that rides a BMX in a park, right? They do stunts, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna get grazes.
Yes.
You're gonna get bruises.
Yes.
And no one talks about your injuries. They only talk about the flip that you can do.
yes,
Right?
oh, I can tell you some injuries.
Yeah. Oh, so can I. But it's the same thing, man. Like, you know, working in community TV for a good long while. I don't even know the amount of productions that we did. I don't know how many commercials I made.
Yeah.
But you know, and working at different companies, I'd have 1 million people at the end of your mouse.
Yeah.
So many audiences and so many things. You learn that, but there's all these little small compartments that make up that bigger picture.
Yeah.
And those small compartments are the hard work. That's the hard work to get to those moments of gold.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to be like have a baby tantrum about it now, but I just
have a baby tantrum.
you know,
about it.
I don't know. I just feel like at times some people, especially because like
I know who you're talking about. I run into it all the time.
Yeah.
They're the same people you run into a pub. I've got a movie idea.
Yeah.
It's also you make movies. I've got a movie idea.
Also because like I am Asian. I guess I look younger than I look. You know, like
Look, I've got to say. Okay. Speaking of which, all right. So in Window, I had to figure out whether you had a brother or not.
oh really?
Yeah, because like I was watching this dude on film, your film.
Yeah.
I'm like, does Vonne have a brother? I'm like, no, that's Vonne. We're gonna have to wait to the credits to figure this out. No, and Misty and I will be debating. No, it's Vonne. No, it's his brother. He's got a brother. I'm like, no, it's Vonne, and it turns out it was
me.
It was you.
It was me.
So yeah, you do look rather young.
Yeah, but like
You make me look old.
Oh well, I mean, thank you, and you're not. But you know, like I just feel like I always get accosted because I look accessible. It sounds like such a terrible thing to
That's
say.
not a terrible thing to say.
But it's
totally
kind of
fine.
like I do have to always come back and say like, look, I've been doing this for a while as well.
Yeah, bring it back down to earth.
And that, like, you know, I'm 31 and like I've been doing this since film school, where I was like 18. So like, just know that I've, you know, last night, for instance, I was in an edit suite till 2 a.m., you know, and it's like when I was doing Halal Girls, I was sleeping in the edit suite to get that across the line.
Yeah.
And, you know, yes, it's on ABC and people are watching the YouTube views and people celebrating that film and like
a lot of sleep deprivation to get it there. Though.
And I will watch that series being like, oh, I remember when like I was like in Palm Springs for a film festival and having to stay up all night so I could stay on the phone with the sound mix that was happening in Australia, and then like literally landed in Sydney on a Tuesday and had to like deliver the full series by Thursday night. So I like went straight from the airport to the edit suite and didn't leave that until it was done. You know, 48 hours in there, and I was like that, but that's not the narrative that's like fun to talk about.
Yeah,
like,
I know it's not fun to talk about, but at the same time, I see for me sometimes that's the juice.
Yeah,
because at the time you're like, this is torture.
Oh god,
because you'd be like editing, you know, you'd be doing the twisty hands, getting it done. Like, yeah, I got this. I'm hotkey all over this. I'm good to go. And then, you know, you drop a file down. You're like, where is it? Like, I've got to work on my file management. You start to have this conversation with yourself. Got to work on my file management. Oh, they didn't clap that. Oh, all right. Okay, I'll find it. It's fine. And then you find yourself speaking through your teeth, and you're like, all right, I've got this. And then you get to the point, and you swear at computer. And you're like, look, it's not your fault, computer. I'm sorry that I shouted at you. Yeah. And then you do get to sleep after you've done an extensive 8-hour edit. Yes. And you wake up the next day and you go, I'm really glad I did that.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think it's like filmmaking is I think filmmaking is really personal. You know, again, I keep coming back to this. It's all about what you want to put in as well. And I always say, like, you know, like same with writing. Like, people think I think like there's this common misconception that writing is really easy, but like if you spend, like, I could
so
spend
difficult.
8 hours a day writing and end up with like 2 pages, but that work is all in there, and your project is absorbing all of that work.
Well, what about? Let me ask you. Speaking of writing, right? Do you ever get to that point? You say, I sometimes look at a blinking cursor.
Yeah.
I get up out of my chair.
Yep.
Walk back and forth.
Yep.
Have a cigarette. Have a drink. Realise I'm drinking too much. Have a coffee.
Yeah.
Get back to the blinking cursor. Start writing. I guess I get to this transition point. It's actually happened to me while editing as well, because it's all in your mind, right? And you've got to get it out of your body.
Yeah.
And I find there's this moment where there's this synchronicity between my hands and my body, and my mind, and it just starts to flow. You get beyond the blinking cursor to actually flowing.
Yeah. Flow state.
Yeah.
So real.
I find that very addictive.
It's like, I think they say it's like it takes 5 minutes to focus. So like if you sit down to do something like edit, which is, I swear, like whenever I sit down to a new edit, I am like tearing my hair out.
Fucking terrifying.
But then like half an hour in, you're like, yeah, okay, I can do this. You know, like, but you just have to spend that initial 5 minutes trying your best to like put your energy into it. Writing is the same, like, because
struggling with the fear.
Yeah, I always say writing is like one of the most difficult parts of what we do, because you're literally, you have a big bang and you have a universe spilling out in your mind that you have to condense into a form that other people can read. Yeah. So like, and that's kind of how I approach filmmaking, is that like writers take the universe and condense it into paper, and then directors break that back into you.
They burst that out again.
Burst that open into a universe. So like, but as a writer, you have to kind of like explore that whole universe and know everything that's in there, and then make decisions of what goes in and goes out. And it is such a hard process. But I think like, I mean, I'm at a point now where like I can sense if a script has done that. Well,
I have different methodologies to do it as well. I love palm cards. I'm a big fan of palm cards. When you're chasing a narrative, I stick the palm cards up on the wall, and then you come to a dead end and you're like, oh, suspension of disbelief has fallen apart because that doesn't make sense with that. Right, palm card, right, how do we palm card our way out of this? And then get it up on the wall, and then I write from the wall. That's what I love doing. I love doing that. Once I've got it mapped, once I've created that map, that blinking cursor is really easy to tackle.
I'm really a big fan of like zero drafts, where your goal is to just get to the end of your script. And I always like look at how people write and like screenwriting advice. Like I steal so many people's methodology, but like one thing that I really love is I think his name's Robert Cargill. He's on Twitter. He's really good at advice, but he says that like what he does is he writes. When he's inspired, he just writes and writes and writes. And then if he ever gets trapped, he doesn't stop. He just puts in brackets, this shit happens, or like something emotional happens here, or like character A does this.
Oh, so it was in a ...
Yeah, and then he just keeps writing. Yeah. And he's like, the best thing you can do is just get that zero draft down, because then like once you have a draft, you can edit it and you can see what you're missing. Yeah,
once you get to an edit stage, it becomes easier.
Yeah, totally.
But with that said, like Misty, she does a lot of my editing for me. So I'll word vomit a script out.
Yeah.
And then she'll go, all right, let me repair this for you. And she did one for me last week, which is one of my babies at the moment, which I've got coming out. Production's coming soon.
Oh, here we go.
I'll be releasing it next year, because it's going to take me a year to build it. It's only a 7-minute short.
Yeah.
But it's my baby. It's the one I've been thinking about for 10 years. So good. But I got it out.
Yeah.
And when I got to tell you, I just felt elated when it left my fingers.
Yeah.
And then I related back to that Hunter S. Thompson idea, when you feel it in your hands.
Yeah.
And this is where I find that buzz. But I like people to understand that to get to that buzz, you need to go through so many stages to get there.
Totally.
And it's not just given to you. You have to go and get it.
Yeah. And not to sound too psycho-spiritual, because I'm like, I look at the creative process, as like a kind of a very holy kind of thing. But, and I keep saying that, like your methodology is personal and figure out what works for you. But at the same time, like it depends on your project. Like each project demands its own methodology as well. Like
it's got to be a bit nimble.
Yeah. Like I'm working on like a half-hour comedy for TV, and that has its own process of like I need to know what the characters are doing, and I need to map out the episodes and the series outline. So I'm solely working on outlines, you know. But then like I'm also writing a play where my form of development is just to have discussions with the director weekly and come up with images. So I kind of just have like images that are defining what the scenes are, and I will eventually write it, but it's just like I know that my vibe is that like that play requires that type of development. You know?
So it brings you back. So those images bring you back to a centaur.
But that seems to be working for that particular play, you know. So then like that's what's been fun about actually being a filmmaker and a storyteller, and you know, I work across stage and screen, but to be able to like learn development techniques and then to be able to throw them at different projects and knowing what each project wants.
I think that's a good perspective. So you're looking at it from a toolbox kind of point of view. So you're like, oh, I've got this task and they require these tools.
Yeah.
But I think, to develop those tools, that's folks, that's where the hard work is. That's where you got to explore.
Yeah.
And you got to triumph and fail.
Oh, you'll fail.
Yeah, you will. You will. You just will. Like, and it happens in a lot of things that I do, whether it's music or film or promotions, right? Things will flop.
Yeah.
They'll flop. They'll hit the ground hard.
They will.
And they feel horrible.
Yeah.
It feels horrible when they flop. It feels really bad.
I think resilience is like the biggest asset you can have as a creative or as a filmmaker. I was speaking to a producer about this yesterday, but like resilience, I think, is also one of the things that they don't teach you how to have.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Which is why, like, when you look at the industry, you know, and you look at who's kind of coming through, that's why usually, most likely, those people are the most resilient. You know, and you can argue that, like, if you are from, you know, a richer family or a richer demographic, or your postcode's like 20 something, like, you don't you kind of are able to enter that sphere of the industry because like your resilience is being earned by different things.
And you haven't been downtrodden in that way. But with that said, though, I think the thing that really trumps everything is passion.
Yes.
If you are passionate, you'll continue.
You just find a way.
You just get hungry.
Yeah.
You get real hungry. And I have not found a point where I have been fulfilled. I'm constantly hungry.
That's I think like the best point. Like the moment that changed for me was when I realized that I prefer to work than I do to like release films. Like when I started seeing filmmaking as actual daily work, where I was like, okay, I just have to like keep going, and like I have so many things in development, and this is happening, you know, this project's up to like scripting stage, this is at post, like but when you start to see your actual creative work as daily work, then you actually get to a really good point, because like it's not make or break. It's not like you're not going to crumble if it all falls through.
It's your part parcel. I'm doing this, and that's it, and that's what it is. And that's
definitely like
it's a good plateau to get to. But
again, that like I keep saying this, but like it works for me. You know what I mean? I always
but I think that's pertinent, right? Because you got to have that disclaimer in there, because people are different, man. We're similar in a lot of ways. Like all of us are very similar. We're all human. We're all driving towards happiness. And a lot of us will coat that coat of paint on something that what is happiness. But the way that we pursue that is different. The way that we get there is different. Our methodologies are different. The way that we interact is different. And I think that's part of that inclusivity of recognizing that.
Totally.
And then coming back to that and just being cool with it.
And the beauty of it is that like when you realize everyone has their own way of working, you know who to collaborate with for certain projects. You know, so like you often find in the industry that like, it's like, I really want to work with that director, or I really want to work with that writer, I just haven't found the project yet. I think that's a really good spot to be in, so that when you do finally align, you can make something that's, you know, going to speak to both of you in your collaboration. Totally.
And as well, I like feeling the buzz in other people. I do. I really get off on that. That's why I say I like finding the best in someone. If I only can find the best in me, I think that's my challenge for the next 10 years, perhaps. But look, we got to plug Halal Girls. So it premieres this Friday.
The 28th of February. It's having its world premiere screening at at Riverside Theatres at 7:45
And that's Parramatta.
in Parramatta.
Where can you go for tickets for Halal Girls?
At the riversideparramatta.com.au. Their official website. So it's part of their cinema. Their cinema stream.
And how do we contact you if we want you to make a film for us?
Find me on socials. So like at Vonnepat, VONNEPAT. Give me a follow because I love having followers.
Look, we all need our followers, man.
Yeah,
We need them.
I'm quite. I don't want to say I'm quite accessible, but like I am someone who loves to talk about their process and to share what I've kind of gone through. And like obviously if you're gonna come at me and be like make my career for me, then I'm not gonna do that.
No, well that's not gonna work.
But you know, like I love giving back to people and to
I've got this film idea and do you have a script? No, then I can't help you.
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
like and knowing sort of what to tell people when they're at that stage. And like I'm always happy to kind of give out advice and stuff and try and create more networks and
be a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. Like, you know, a part of our generation is working with older generations in the industry, they're very secretive about the craft.
oh yeah,
Very secretive.
I can say some stuff about that actually.
Yeah, you know, like, I know this is I won't share what we were talking about LUTs before. No, this is the LUT that I use.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can't have that because that's my LUT. Right.
Yeah.
I'm not going to show you how to build it either.
It's
okay.
It's actually a really weird.
It's color grading people, just for people that are listening to know what a LUT is. So.
it's a really weird experience, and like I actually haven't spoken about this publicly, so like this is a bit of an exclusive. But I want to share this because I think like the people who are listening to this like can kind of get an insight. So in terms of like film and TV, like I work at I don't want to say a high level, but like I do work with a lot of established production companies now, and it's been really weird because especially last year was the big year that I started working at a certain level that I would deem like quite professional. Like I don't necessarily have another job. Like I don't have a day job. So I'm lucky to be,
you've crossed over.
Yeah,
I've done the crossover, cross back, crossover, cross back. I'm the yo-yo.
I know. I'm like, how long can I stay in this side of it? But
just stay over there, man. You're on a good wicket. Stay over there.
Yeah. But I was working on a TV show that gave me such like anxiety and stress, and I absolutely destroyed me, like chopped me up to every molecule.
I really
and like
relate to that,
was such a stressful environment that I like didn't know who I was. And I will say like coming through that and learning to build myself up again, and dealing with like a multi-million-dollar budget and multi-million-dollar crew who kind of like talk to you like you're nothing, to claim a space, to be able to fight and claim a space on that set, weirdly, like I say like it broke me, but then it solidified,
hardened you.
It
as
hardened
well.
me a lot. And like
that,
and one thing that's really weird is that I feel people in the industry who kind of are behind that barrier can sense when you're hardened, and that to me is like one of the sadder things about the film industry.
Yeah,
is that,
it's like you're combat ready.
Yeah, but it's like the people who are like the top producers and
that thick skin,
the directors, but we're all thick-skinned and we're all calloused, like we're all like battle worn, and like, and it's weird now, like I can go into a room and literally like sense who has gone through that sort of stress, and to me that is one of the sadder realities of the film industry.
Yeah, it moves from that passive aggression to aggression, and then you have the drop shoulder after that. I know exactly what you're talking about. It happens a lot in TV.
Yeah.
Film a little bit.
Yeah,
but
it's more. I'd say more TV.
It's definitely more TV.
Yeah, but it's a really hard like pill to swallow, especially like, and I don't obviously tell this story to like a lot of aspiring filmmakers because they don't want to hear that like you have to be destroyed to get to a certain level. But like it did happen to me, and
it's
like,
a hazing.
Yeah, and that I hope changes, and if that's why I'm like, even though I'm working at this side of the industry now, like I still want to be part of the conversation that's happening. I still want to be around like filmmakers who are like, making shorts and kind of like figuring out what works for them, because like I never want to kind of lose sight of that in myself.
Yeah. You don't want to lose yourself in that.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying, but I've had a lot of time to think about this. I think it's to do with money. With TV, the bottom line is everything.
Totally.
It's everything.
Yes.
It's about commercial space. Everything's on the line, and if you stuff up, you're out, and you are easily replaced.
Oh, there is so many people who can just do your job.
You're very easily replaced. In film, it's all about we got this production, and we got this story to tell, and everyone loves it. And everyone's going to have a great time.
Yep.
We're pissing money against the wall, and we don't care about getting it back.
Yeah. I feel like films are a bit more passion-led. Usually.
Yeah, but the problem is that TV makes more money.
Yeah, it does.
But there's another spectrum out there that I've realised, and that's the social media spectrum.
Yeah.
And there's these up-and-comers that we're finding ways to make money that don't necessarily require nastiness.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm getting excited about.
Is that me as well?
That's us. That's us. That's all of us. It's all of us.
No, it's like, I think that's the...
We'll talk about these combat-hardened days in 20 years' time. Go, I used to be rough back in our day.
I mean, that's what was funny is that when I was working on this show, Halal Girls was dropping at the same time, and I remember like I'm not even going to joke about this. Like Halal Girls saved my life because like I could look at my phone and be like, oh look, I got like 80,000 views on my trailer, and like I have hundreds of comments of support from these people who are appreciating this like small web series that I made, and that would get me through the day, and it made me feel human because like on TV you're just kind of like a machine. Like
it was a little bit of a meditation mantra that you had where you go, I know I'm having a shitty day, but I can reference this moment over here.
Yeah, it really like
too.
Yeah, and I think
that's my dichotomy between film and TV.
Yeah, and that. The emergence of digital technology and like the different platforms, I think has definitely changed everything for me. Because like when I was in film school, I was just like, oh, I want to be a feature film director. I want to be Tarantino and like do all this stuff.
I'm going to be a hero.
Yeah, like, and I'm going to be like the director who sits on top of everything.
I tried to break my voice as much as I could saying that. I'm going to be a hero.
That was probably what I sounded like.
Yeah.
But knowing that there's like digital technology, there is such a democratization of the landscape now that like if you create a show and release it on YouTube, you're still tapping into your audience,
Totally.
And I say this sincerely, like a lot of the existing film industry do not know how to tap into the digital space.
No, there's certainly a separation.
Yes,
there's a void, and that's I guess that's part of the inspiration for the podcast is to try and link these things together, to try and inspire people and then showcase what we're doing, and bringing a social media audience to that field, and I think that there's me and others that are doing this, and I think it's a really positive thing, really is. But look, I think we need to wrap it up. Vonne. But once again, check out Halal Girls premiering this Friday at the Riverside Theatres in Parramatta.
Yes.
Mate, I cannot thank you enough for being a part of our community.
Much. Oh, God. I hope half of this is useful.
Oh, man, like all of it is totally useful. And it's been a great discussion. I think we've actually broken the record for the longest podcast that we've ever done.
That's me, because I will not stop talking.
Yeah. I realised that because I'm like, it's just going to take me forever to edit. Because look, don't get me wrong, I'm upgrading the studio soon. We're going to do live edit. Cool. But at this time, I still need to take the cards out and ingest them later and then do an edit.
I am not, I feel sorry for you.
No, don't feel sorry for me. I love, like we were talking about it before, I love editing content. Okay. Even though it's 3 a.m. sometimes, it's what gets me going.
Just wait 5 minutes and then you'll be into it.
Just give it some time. Yeah. But a big lesson out there, kids, a little bit of hard work gets you a long way. But thank you for joining the Pagey train. And don't forget to check out Still Searching Productions. We do Foley, we do promotions, we do short films, we do commercials. Check us out on our website, stillsearchingproductions.com. And thank you, Vonne, for being on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm going to wait to camera.
All right, we're done, buddy. We're done.
Oh, God.
Oh, wow. Where are we running? Oh, wow, hour and a half.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
No, don't apologise.
Don't apologise, man.
Every moment of that is gold.